I'm Insomniac, and this is the Seiko SNE507. Before I get this review started, I'd like to give a big shout out to Rosemary. This is actually another one of her watches. You might have seen recently the review I did on the Seiko Presage Cocktail Time. That was also one of hers. And so you might be a little bit confused because you might be thinking, you just said her watches, so why are you reviewing them? Well, watches, as I have discussed in the beginning of, might have been in the Seiko review actually, most of them, unless they have, rhinestones in them or they're pink or Hello Kitty or something else, watches are basically unisex. And in this particular case, it's not even like it's marketed as a woman's watch, but a man can wear it. This is actually marketed as a man's watch from Seiko, but it has a really great size to it and a kind of delicate and beautiful shape to it, which we will get more in depth with in the review. That really looks great on a woman's wrist, and this is a watch that she happens to love, and in the time that I borrowed it, I actually thought it was pretty fantastic. I've been wearing it for the last few days. Although that was all just a long version of this is actually a men's watch from Seiko, but an awesome woman owns it. Alright, with that said, let us dive into the watch piece by piece. The case on this piece is pretty special. At first glance, it's just a round case like most other cases, finished in a polished stainless with a thin, elegant bezel-like ring around the crystal. But if you look closer, two things really stand out. Number one, it's really thin, only 9.5 millimeters. Number two, there's a really cool deep ribbed pattern around the entire case, only being broken up by the lugs and the crown guard. Speaking of the crown, it's a little bit too small in my opinion, but the grip in the sides is well machined and it's easy to manipulate. And the face of the crown has this blue cabochon that matches the dial color perfectly and just works very nice with the overall flow of the case. Case back on this watch is probably the simplest case back I've seen on any watch. It just says Seiko, has some more information printed in small font towards the bottom, and otherwise it's just a flat, clean, linear brushed stainless steel. Last we have the solid lugs, which are a great length and have just enough curve to accentuate the wrist while not looking out of place. And they're finished with raised sections of brushed stainless to create a seamless flow with the bracelet design, which looks wonderful. Overall, I'm fairly impressed with this case. For what this is, and for the price point, Seiko could have easily just went with a standard round case and a plain crown, but instead they really paid some great attention to detail here. The dial on this watch is beautiful, and not unlike the case, there are some great details here to appreciate. The color of the dial is this beautiful royal blue. The outermost section of the dial is an angled almost chapter ring with printed indices for the minutes. Just under that, you have thick applied hour markers with brushed top surfaces and polished angled sides, giving the markers a really great depth on this dial. Under the hour markers at the outer edge of the flat portion of the dial, you have this insanely unique finish happening that looks matte finished yet metallic at the same time, and simple yet complex enough to play with the light, almost like a radial finish. The center section of the dial has this awesome, almost basket weave style pattern to it, which catches and plays with light wonderfully, depending on how you look at the watch. You have a nice applied Seiko logo up under the 12, and Solar printed above the 6. Then, set at the outer edge of this section, you have a date window at 3 o'clock. Last we have the hands. The second hand is flat and polished and has a great shape to it. The minute and hour hands are awesome. They're semi-sword shaped hands that are perfect length for this dial, and they have a 50-50 finishing that makes them almost look like they glow depending on the light. Half of those hands are brushed while the other half is polished. This is a really nice touch. Overall, the dial on this watch leaves nothing to be desired. It's a job well done by Seiko. The only usable complication on this piece is the date at 3 o'clock. It's a cleanly printed white numeral on a black disc, and because of how dark the blue is on this dial, it actually blends really well with the dial. It's large enough to read easily, and does what it has to do. Time at a glance on this piece is excellent. You have a dual contrast here against the blue dial because both the hour markers and the hands are a mix of polished and stainless, so in just about any light, the hands and markers are really easy to see. Add that to the fact that the hands are long and pointy, and that the minute track is white printing on dark blue, and outside of trying to tell the time in the dark, you can always quickly and easily tell the time on this watch. Accuracy here is about as good as you're going to get. It's a solar quartz movement made by one of the best brands in the business. Even the look of the movement is impressive. Oftentimes with deadbeat seconds quartz watches, you have a springiness to the stop of the second hand, and I rarely see deadbeat second hands that actually stop at and line up with every minute index on the dial, but this one does. It's very nice. The bracelet on this piece is a highly detailed and fairly intricate piece. Starting with the finishing, you visually have a 9-piece link for every link, with polished outer edges, then a brushed section, then polished divides between more brushed sections, and then a polished centerpiece. The staggering of the sections adds an excellent texture and almost cascading effect to the flow of the bracelet's design, and all of the finishing has a high quality look to it. On the wrist, the bracelet is comfortable and well balanced and doesn't make any cheap bracelet noises when you move your wrist. The 2-button deployant clasp works flawlessly and is a minimal size, basically to be only large enough for the locking mechanism itself, and the Seiko logo is well engraved into the clasp. One of the only negatives to this bracelet is found when sizing the watch or adding and subtracting links. Each link is actually 3 pieces. The link itself, then these polished sleeves that go over the recessed separated sections on the link. I found that when sizing the bracelet for Rosemary originally and then again for myself, these sleeve things have to be lined up exactly right or the pins don't go back through the links. And on top of that, they occasionally fall off during link removals, and they're very tiny, so they're easy to lose. Not the end of the world, but definitely a bit more frustrating than adding or subtracting links on most standard bracelets. And last but not least, we have value. The MSRP of this watch on Seiko's website is $295, but as of the time of this review, I saw it on a few websites for sale, including Amazon, I believe, for as low as $175. At $175, it's not like it's a steal, but it's definitely a good value. The only reason at that price I'm not telling you all to go buy 7 of them, despite the fact that you just saw an almost completely positive review, is because at the end of the day, even though solar quartz is better than regular quartz because you go about 10 years without a battery change, it is still quartz. And for the true watch nerd or collector who appreciates the craft of the mechanical movement, you're just not going to get that here. However, if you look at the fact that it is more accurate than most mechanical watches, is solar powered so you don't have to deal with battery changes, then factor in the incredible build quality and attention to detail that you get with this piece, I can confidently say that it is definitely a good value at $175. Well, another thanks to Rosemary for lending this for review. Definitely a nice piece, so I'm glad to get it on here. Speaking of which, if any of you watching have watches that you would like to send in to be reviewed, you'd like to see what kind of score your watch would get, email me at shouldItimethis@gmail.com. I'll tell you where to send it. The watch will be reviewed, insured, and sent back. Also, if you'd like to see a lot more videos on this channel, and you would like to have 1 week early access to all my new watch reviews and watch videos, and have access to a bunch of other now watch-related rewards specifically, there is a Should I Time This Patreon. It is the link at the top of the video description. I could use your support over there. All right, I will see you all at the next one.